Good morning everyone and welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee this morning. I'm David Barker, I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. But before I do the rest of the introductions, I'm going to make Joanne run back to her place to do the housekeeping arrangements. So.
Thank you, Chair. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please take instruction from staff and stewards. The assembly point is at Tudor Square. Please can I request everyone to switch mobile devices to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. The meeting today will be webcast and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. It is also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast this meeting. Whenever the meeting is open to the public, photography, video and sound recording of the proceedings is permitted. However, the Chair has discretion to withdraw or suspend this permission, for example, if the recording is disrupting the conduct of the meeting or is being undertaken in a manner which could capture personal information, or in the event that a member of the public participating in a meeting objects to being recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. So, for anyone with a memory like mine, I'm still David Barker, I'm still chairing the subcommittee this morning. To my right are the members of the committee. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name's Councillor John Booker, Stockbridge and Upper Don Ward.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Stuart, Wallace, Baton Ward.
And we have a number of council officers working with us this morning. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves, please?
Morning, Samantha Bond, Legal Advisor to the Subcommittee. Hello, I'm Jane Goff from Licensing and I'll be reading the report this morning.
Joanne Cooper, Democratic Services.
And could I now just ask the applicants first to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Bill Don from Silver Fox Licensing Consultants, and today I'm representing the applicant.
Hi, I'm Phil Thompson, the applicant for the Retrodome licence.
And could I now ask the responsible authorities and interested parties to introduce yourselves, please?
Hello, I think Greg's name appears, but I'm actually Amanda Pickard, Public Health Principal, and I work alongside Greg in Greg's team.
And I'm Greg Fell, Director of Public Health.
Hi, I'm Sam Higgins. I'm Director of Operations for Way Through, covering South Yorkshire and obviously with responsibility for likewise premises at Portland House.
Thank you, and as I say, you are all very welcome this morning. I don't believe we've had any apologies, have we? Do any members have any declarations of interest on any items on this agenda? If not, then we can move on to the meeting, which follows a set process, which is outlined on page 66 of our papers, which may or may not correspond with your papers. But at item 4 of the process, you will see it says the solicitor to the committee will outline the process to be followed. So, Sam, could I ask you to outline the procedure today?
Thank you, Chair. Just checking everyone's got a copy of papers or can see a copy of papers. Lovely. We've had all the additional material that you submitted as well earlier in the week, so that's helpful. Thank you. So, yeah, as the Chair said, the procedure's on page 66 of the agenda pack. So, basically, I'll just run through it. It looks worse than it is. The licensing officer, who's Jane this morning, will introduce the report. If there are any questions concerning the report, we can raise those then. So if there's anything that needs amending or updated, we can get that done for the record. We'll head first to the interested parties to detail their relevant representations. I think if we start with Sheffield Public Health first and then to Way Through to follow on from that. Members will have an opportunity to ask questions, and with the leave of the Chair, the applicant and their representative may ask you questions as well. We'll then head to the applicant and their representative to detail the application, provide clarification on the application and respond to the representations made, both written in the report and at the hearing here today. Again, members can ask you questions, and with the leave of the Chair, all the parties may ask you questions as well. Everyone will be given the opportunity to sum up their representations, with the final say being with the applicant, given that it's their application we're here to consider today. We'll then take the options from Jane as detailed in the report, when members will go into private session while they take legal advice and consider the application. So if you do want to wait around this morning, we can give you that decision a little bit later on. The decision of the Licensing Committee will be given in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act 2003 and regulations made thereunder. And any time during the hearing, members can request legal advice. We can do that in open session as we are now, where we'll just have a general discussion, or private, where we'll just ask everyone on that side of the room just to nip next door while we have a discussion, and then we'll invite you back in and feedback what that was. And as the Chair said, it is a public meeting this morning, unless at any point we determine that the recording should be paused and any members of the public excluded, but we can deal with that if and when we get to it. And that's everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. So that's the process. Could we have the report, please, Jane?
You certainly can. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the hearing for the determination of a grant of a premises licence for Retrodome 1 to 7 Allen Street, Sheffield S37AW. So the application was received from Retrodome Sheffield Limited on the 5th of June 2026, which is Appendix A of your report, if you wanted to see that. So the application is for a family entertainment centre providing a free play arcade experience, which involves charging an entry fee to the premises combined with food and drink offerings inside. It's not intended to operate as a bar, public house, nightclub or alcohol-led venue. Alcohol will be a minor and ancillary part of the overall business, as outlined in the application. And the main attraction will be the gaming and family entertainment offer itself. So customers will not be attending the premises primarily to drink alcohol. The licensing service has checked the type of gaming machines that are going to be available in the premises, and the applicants have outlined what they propose to do, and it hasn't been deemed that any further gambling authorisations are required at this moment in time. They are explained to be skill-based machines and don't offer any kind of prize, with all machines being suitable for all ages. So throughout the consultation period, we've had agreed conditions with South Yorkshire Police and the Health Protection Service, which are at Appendix B of your report. So the reason why we're here today is that we have unresolved representations from Sheffield Public Health and Way Through, which is a drug and alcohol treatment and recovery service. Any additional conditions that have been offered by the applicant to try and mitigate any concerns raised by one of the objections have not taken away the objection itself, which remains in place. These can be found at Appendix C. So everybody's been invited to attend this morning. Appendix D will hold that information. And to save us all a couple of hours, I'll scoot through to Section 8, which is the appeal section, which states that the Licensing Act 2003, Section 1A1 and Schedule 5 makes provision for appeals to be made by the applicant and those making representations against decisions of the licensing authority to the Magistrates' Court. So the recommendations this morning, Chair, are that members carefully consider representations made and take such steps as the subcommittee consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives.
Thank you, Jane. Have members got any questions on the report at all? Do the applicants have any questions on the report?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I have two comments. The applicant is Retrodome Chef Limited, not Sheffield Limited. And secondly, can you confirm that as councillors you've received my skeleton argument and have had the opportunity to read it?
We have received it and had the opportunity to read it, and read it even as well. Not only had the opportunity, but actually read it.
Perfect. What a good start.
Do the responsible authorities or interested parties have any questions on the report at all? Then I'll pass over to Public Health to start us off to detail your representations.
Thanks, Councillor Barker. So I'll start. I'll be fairly brief and I'll hand over to Amanda and then we'll pass to Way Through, I think. So the objection is based on the unique circumstances of the site. Immediately adjacent to the main drug and alcohol treatment centre and recovery service, which the council has significantly invested in the not too distant past. The risk is purported to be theoretical. I don't think it's theoretical or speculative or generalised. It's unique to this particular location. It's area-based, and there's a fair amount of evidence in our objection about the sensitivity of the site, where the service is provided from the site, and the vulnerabilities of the people who use the site. Of note, I'll stray briefly away from the evidence, but The licensing subcommittee has made decisions in the past based on specific sites in a different context, Royal Amusements, gambling, adult gaming centre. The decision there, which did go to district court in the end, was made in no small order on the specifics of the site and the vulnerabilities of the people around the site. So there's a little bit of precedent. The evidence before the committee, the applicant proposes the arcade operating alongside alcohol sales opposite Portland House, sales between 11 a.m. 10:30 p.m. with a close at 11 p.m. As I say, Portland House is the main premises of Likewise, delivered by Way through Sheffield, specialist alcohol treatment and recovery hub, supports thousands of the most vulnerable adults in the city in recovery from alcohol addiction. That's its purpose, that's its point. The service supports those with alcohol dependency and a whole host of complex vulnerabilities aside. Recovery services, well documented, seek to minimise exposure to alcohol-related triggers. That's grounded in a whole bunch of clinical evidence and good practice established over many years to decades. My commissioning colleagues were really clear that they wouldn't have supported locating the service where it is, Portland House, had an alcohol-led venue already existed. The objection is based on undermining the Licensing Act of Public Safety, but there's obviously a kind of a Venn diagram around public safety, crime and disorder, and I'll pick up some of those points now. I'll be clear, the police are obviously the main source of expertise on crime and disorder, but they're not the only source. Other stakeholders can equally have evidence to bring to bear on crime and disorder. I think that's set out in section 182, and Sam is our legal expert, so she may well confirm or deny that. Any responsible authority, public health is a responsible authority, can prevent evidence on the impact on crime and disorder, one of the specific Licensing Act objectives. Thus, significant daily footfall by people experiencing alcohol and drug dependence, homelessness, co-occurring mental ill health, domestic abuse, exploitation, offending histories and multiple disadvantage all at once. And many people will access that site on a daily basis with any mix of those types of vulnerabilities. Many will be in crisis. Many will be vulnerable and a stage of their recovery where they've impaired impulse control and heightened craving. So they're very sensitive to triggers and relapse. That would be something that I would dearly like to avoid, and I'm sure Sam would say the same. Way through have confirmed past incidents involving intoxication, and granting sale of alcohol immediately opposite creates a dynamic between the two sites that creates some pretty clear risks. Way through have confirmed that there are past incidents around the premises before introducing alcohol sales opposite the venue. It seems reasonably logical that there'll be heightened risks after introducing alcohol sales opposite the venue. There have been multiple occurrences of individuals under the influence displaying threatening or intimidating behaviour towards staff and the wider public. It goes with the territory in this business, and again, alcohol sales carry the risk of exacerbating some of those risks. An incident has been recorded where an individual, whilst intoxicated, was knocked down on the main road immediately adjacent to Portland House, and that obviously highlights significant risk to personal safety, but also significant risk to others who, I don't know the circumstances of that collision, but may have been risks to others. There's something that I'd like the committee to consider around the licensing objective around protection of children from harm. The operating model of Retrodome, stated by the applicant via the licensing application and the planning statement, actively promotes itself as a family-friendly, child-attracting leisure venue, including pricing and offers designed to encourage attendance by children and young people based on school terms, etc. Again, consider this in the context of the location, a child-friendly leisure environment, on-site prominent alcohol availability with immediate proximity to a population experiencing substance misuse, alcohol harm, and the host of complex vulnerabilities that I'd highlighted earlier. Given the way-through statement with regarding past incidents before the introduction of alcohol sales, the risk seems logical to increase to me that those kinds of risks would increase. Children attending the venue may well be exposed to visible alcohol consumption and intoxication, street drinking and associated behaviours, and individuals experiencing distress, crisis, substance-related harm in the immediate vicinity. it doesn't seem to me compatible to a typical family leisure setting. I'll pause there, and I think Amanda wants to address some of the arguments, some of the issues in the skeleton argument put forward by the applicants.
Yeah, I've just got a few, several points just to go through briefly. So point 1.1 in the skeleton argument said that public health is not a licensing objective. I just want to make it clear we have not made this claim. So public health are a responsible authority, and it's the team who are making a case based on the impact of at least two of the other licensing objectives in our representation. Section 182 guidance says that each responsible authority is an expert in their own arena, and also that whilst the police, as Greg mentioned, whilst the police are the main source, and we accept that, Section 182 guidance also says that public health have information that other responsible authorities may not have, and that is the case with the way through evidence. The points 1.12 and 1.13 that the public health objection is speculative, no direct evidence, and is not based and is generalised. Again, as Greg mentioned, this is area-based evidence, and our understanding is that that is legitimate, and it is to do with the concerns arise from the immediate proximity of alcohol sales, and everything, as Greg has outlined, on the adjacent recovery centre. It's all respect to the applicant. I'm sure they're very capable of making responsible alcohol sales, but again, this is not about responsibility of alcohol sales. It's about the specific context around the area. Point 1.14 in the skeleton argument about the agents attempted to mediate with objectors. Yes, that was the case with Waythrough, who deemed it insufficient. However, again, Section 182 guidance says that applicants should reach out before the application is made and before the statutory timeframes come into effect. And again, respectfully, I would say that there was no real commitment to research in the immediate vicinity. And given that this is one of the most sensitive receptors in the city for an alcohol licence application, we feel that should have happened before the application was made. And finally, point 1.18 around the need to, that the committee should consider the need to promote growth and economic benefit. We would point out that that is consider, not must promote, and we would respectfully ask the committee to consider the local economic impacts of introducing an alcohol venue opposite a place where highly vulnerable adults are attempting to actively recover from drug and alcohol dependency. And I think just one final point is around the alcohol being ancillary. Alcohol is not ancillary just because someone says it's ancillary. I would ask what practical restrictions demonstrate why it is ancillary. The evidence we have seen through planning and through licensing is that there is that it will be a bar with fixed pumps, and the plans show the development of a clear bar area, not a kitchen cafe area. What proportion of the income is expected to be from alcohol sales? If it truly is ancillary, then I'm sure the applicant would have no objections to conditions such as no vertical drinking, that alcohol is restricted to the bar area and seated only, and that alcohol sales could be limited to a shorter period after likewise has closed its doors for business after 5 o'clock. Also, again, whilst I admit that this is not the Barnsley site, the applicant has stated it will be run very similar to the Barnsley site. The signage at the Barnsley site shows that it is advertised as an arcade and bar, not just an arcade venue. And I think that was it from myself. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the way through representations are likely to be quite linked to this. I'll move on to those before we open this up to questions. So if you'd like to address the committee.
Okay, so I'm not here as a licensing expert. I'm here because I'm responsible for the service that operates immediately next door to proposed premises. I've 25 years experience of managing drug and alcohol services and the incidents that happen within them. And every day my teams manage the safeguarding, clinical and operational risks associated with supporting some of Sheffield's most vulnerable residents. So it's from that experience that I ask you to consider my concerns today. First and foremost, the applicants described our concerns as speculative. With respect, they are not. They are based on what happens at Portland House every single day. So just to provide some context to that, in the last 12-month period, we've had 4,977 people accessing treatment. Over 2,000 of those were alcohol treatment episodes. We have 4,258 of those with mental health needs. We've made 196 safeguarding referrals in the last year, and we've had 82 referrals relating to abuse. We have a number of other statistics, but obviously don't want to share them because it's sensitive information. Those figures don't demonstrate that Portland House is unsafe. They demonstrate the complexity of the people we support and the realities of delivering frontline addiction treatment. The other side of this, I suppose, the relationship between the two premises isn't one-directional. So whilst we have concerns regarding the impact alcohol sales may have on the vulnerable adults accessing treatment, I also question whether the applicant has adequately considered the impact that the existing neighbouring healthcare service may have upon the family environment they seek to create. So we actively discourage children attending Portland House, not because it's dangerous, but because it's a specialist addiction treatment centre. I welcome the applicant's willingness to engage, but the conditions offered don't answer what I believe is a fundamental question before the committee. Can customers still smoke outside? Yes. Can customers still wait outside? Yes. Can customers still leave having consumed alcohol? Yes. Will my service users still arrive every day? Yes. And will those two groups still occupy the same public space? Yes. That interaction cannot be conditioned away. Regarding Shellsmore, a convenience store selling alcohol for consumption elsewhere isn't comparable to an admission-based leisure venue where customers remain on site consuming alcohol before entering the surrounding public realm. So to sum up, the applicant has asked you to trust that they will operate responsibly. I don't question that intention, but the decision before you today isn't simply whether Retrodome is a responsible business. It's whether licensed alcohol can be introduced immediately adjacent to Sheffield's principal drug and alcohol treatment service without undermining the licensing objectives. So based on my responsibility for this service, my professional experience and the evidence I've presented today, I don't believe it can. So I therefore respectfully ask you to refuse the application.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So I'll open this up to questions then now. Stuart, is there anything you'd like to ask the responsible authorities and interested parties at this stage?
Yes, please. Thank you. Obviously, Portland House does an outstanding job and is a great benefit to people who attend there on a regular basis. My main concern, in addition to the Shellsmore Local Express, which the front of the premises are plastered with adverts for alcohol, and this is immediately opposite Portland House. Also, within easy walking distance, there are several bars which people can go into free of charge. When the proposal for the licence at the premises goes, it will be by admission at a fee. I would ask why people would pay to go into a place where they can purchase alcohol when within a very short walking distance away from there they can get alcohol without an admission fee.
Thanks, Councillor Wallace. I'll have a quick go. When we set up Portland House to be the premises for the service provider that way through there was a very short list of potentially suitable sites, and there were some compromises made in that. I'll be very clear on that one. Point made, understood. However, it's still a premises that's immediately opposite the location for Portland House and way through, and it arguably makes an existing situation worse. So I think that's something that's worth considering.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, sorry, to add to that point, a convenience store is very different in that you don't have people standing outside vaping or smoking who are under the influence. It's somewhere you'd go and take alcohol away from the area, presumably, as opposed to the premises next door where we're kind of sharing the same external environment and potentially a mix between our service users and other service users who might not respond positively to the people that access our service.
Thank you. What evidence do you have to show that people who shop at the local express don't stand in the immediate vicinity consuming the alcohol they purchased?
We're directly opposite. The office where I sit has a clear view of the shop, and I have never seen that in my time at Portland House.
Thank you very much.
Try again. John, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes. Thank you for your report. You described the venue as an alcohol venue. Is that exactly accurate?
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to respond to that. I have seen the plans that were submitted to planning as well, as part of the planning process, alongside the plan that was developed here. My understanding is that alcohol is, you may be able to answer this particular question, but my understanding is that alcohol is available throughout the venue, that there is a dedicated bar area which looks to any normal person like a bar, sort of with fixed pumps, and is described as a bar. Bear with me 1 second. It is the promotion of the Barnsley site, and again, I completely accept that is the Barnsley site, and we're talking about the Sheffield site, but we can only go on the fact that the applicant has stated they will run it in a very similar style. It is advertised as a bar, and the promotion and social media around the marketing of the venue is very much alcohol, appears to be quite alcohol-led at times, with cocktail nights being advertised, and again, the fixed signage describes it as a bar. Appreciate that is, again, that is the Barnsley site. I would, the bar area is also, I don't know if it has a seated area, but if it is truly ancillary, as I said earlier on, there would be no objections to limiting the alcohol to the bar area or keeping it as seated and restricting its availability throughout the venue. Its availability throughout the venue, a bar area, makes it feel very much like a normal sort of bar, alcohol-led venue to myself anyway. I'm sure to most people that is how it would come across.
Well, thank you for that answer. Another question I have is the link between seeing families and people walking into this Retrodome and playing games and causing issues to people who are struggling from alcohol and drug abuse. A little story I have, a good friend of mine who grew up in a pub, who's a very successful businessman now. He said to me, I drink very little after seeing a lot of people in that pub who drank a lot and got themselves into a state. It turned him the other way. So it's the link I'm not quite grasping. People, families turning up, parking, the entrance is the other side of Portland House, families coming in to play pinball machines, which I loved when I was at college. I was a whiz on the pinball machine, and to me it was and when I've been abroad with my family, we used to go into places like this, and there was something new then, and I loved it. And my father used to have a drink, and my mother, not a lot, and I used to play on the machines, and it was a wonderful experience. And it didn't make me an alcoholic. It makes you responsible, I think, sometimes, if your family's there. It's just a link. It's, you know, I'm just looking for the link. So you could explain that.
Sam may comment further. It's not possible to definitively say that this venue in this location will exacerbate a problem, but there's a balance of risks. There's a balance of risk there, which we've tried to articulate, but the venue doesn't exist yet, so we can't say that it will. There may be a relationship between the venue and Portland House, but equally there'll be a relationship the other way. There'll be lots of vulnerable people with complex mental health problems and a whole bunch of other vulnerabilities. Impulse control in that cohort is well documented, and Sam will comment on that as a service provider, to be a lot poorer. So there's the potential that it may trigger people back into, people who are recovering alcoholics back into drinking. As I say, it's impossible to demonstrate that will happen with this venue, but there's plenty of empirical evidence in other spaces to say that it's fairly heightened risk. And Councillor Booker, with respect, that it may not have been an issue for individuals you know, but there's plenty of other evidence to say that exposure to alcohol for those who are recovering alcoholics triggers relapses. That's obviously one of our concerns.
I'm not really sure much what much more I can add, other than historically, and the evidence base is there, as Greg states, that having a drug and alcohol service next to premises that sell alcohol is a trigger for people that use our services. The signage, the reason we found out initially that Retrodome were moving there was very visible signage around the building promoting a bar, and it was one of our staff members who has lived experience of alcohol who brought it urgently to management and escalated it as a serious concern, and that is someone who has got lived experience of alcohol use. That was their personal experience of that impacting as a trigger in their recovery. I've 25 years expertise working in this field, working with clients with alcohol problems, and part of our work is talking about people with the triggers and how lapses and relapses occur, and it can be something as insignificant to you and I as walking past a premises that is selling alcohol, and we work with people to try and manage coping strategies for that. Obviously, we have people new into treatment who are less, not as far into their treatment and recovery pathway as newly presenting people. And we have significant evidence that will act as a trigger and potentially cause lapse and relapse for individuals accessing the service.
Yeah, I'd just like to add as well that whilst the question was specifically about alcohol, one of the points that we were making earlier, that Greg was making earlier, was that the venue is about supporting people with multiple different complex vulnerabilities. It might not just be alcohol, or it could be drug-related recovery as well. And there have been incidents of overdoses occurring in and around the premises linked to drug use as well as alcohol use. And multiple occurrences of individuals under the influence of different drugs. And the incident recorded where an individual was knocked down on a main road. It's not just about children seeing the alcohol, it's about the children witnessing those types of bringing children into that, or actively bringing more children into that space where those types of incidents have and will happen. So it's not just about the alcohol, it's about witnessing those type of street-related behaviours as well.
Thank you for that. So on that basis, obviously, we do have, and we keep records of this, and we've got statistical information to actually back it up and prove it. We do have overdose situations on site. They're not few and far between. They're quite normal occurrences around the areas of drug and alcohol services, unfortunately. I've got my point, what I was going to say to that. Yeah, so we do have incidents which, for experienced staff who've been working with these situations for many years, can be quite traumatic when you have someone who's in a near-death situation, and there's a lot of crisis intervention at the time. But for our staff, recognising how traumatic that experience can actually be, we have measures in place within the service where we have wellbeing and full debriefs and support for staff who were involved. If you were a public onlooker to those situations, what support do they actually get following that incident? Because we have no contact with those people, so I'd be concerned about what support they'd get after witnessing some of those incidents, which are quite traumatic.
Thank you. I think most of my points have been fairly well covered, so I'll ask the easy one. What are the opening hours for Portland House?
Sorry, Chair, could you just repeat that? I didn't hear that.
I was just asking what the opening hours for Portland House are.
So the opening hours currently are 9 to 5, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and 9 till 7 on a Thursday. But that said, that is the current operating times. We are looking into further extending those times within our specification. It states an ambition to open 7 days a week. We're also having increased numbers in treatment significantly. We have a high number of people who are currently working, seeking support, and we will have to consider opening further late nights to meet that demand. So it is very much an evolving situation, and we can't sort of guarantee that those opening hours are going to remain.
Sadly, demand not going down, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just to add, Councillor Barker, as Treatment Commissioner, would absolutely support Portland House to extend their opening hours if they feel it's operationally necessary. They're a very, very successful service, and we want to kind of maximise the impact of them. So if the treatment provider says we need to open further, Commissioner will certainly support that.
Thank you. You've covered the point I wanted to. I was looking for further information on the risks to children and young people who've been in the area, which I think you've covered well. Just going back to the triggers, obviously people have to travel to and from Portland House, and there will be numerous triggers en route. How significant would this additional thing be in terms of it? I know it's probably not an easy question to answer, but would it make a big difference given all the other possible trigger factors?
I mean, the answer to that is possibly not for everybody, but it can do. It just adds another layer of complexity. You know, we're asking someone to come for a treatment appointment who's very dependent on alcohol, and they will have to walk past a place next door. They might arrive early, so they might be in the area for a long time hanging around, outside waiting for their appointment next to a venue selling alcohol. So it's just adding further temptation and not really supporting that ambition for someone to avoid those situations. When we're working with individuals with alcohol, we look at ways they can reduce their contact with triggers, and it might be they usually walk past a venue, which has always been a trigger on their way to the train station. We will do things like asking them to, setting them challenges to walk in a different way so they're not passing that venue. This is every day working with alcohol clients. But unfortunately, to access Portland House, you just cannot avoid it. It is right next door, and there is no way to avoid that.
Thank you. Sam, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Firstly, can I just ask whoever's phone keeps going off to please either turn it off or put it on silent? It is quite disruptive to the proceedings. Secondly, I was going to ask a similar question, obviously, with the location of the tram stops and bus stops, but I think you've sort of covered that in terms of minimising the triggers that are available there. So just finally, I think, Amanda, you sort of mentioned some potential conditions that would minimise harm, sort of around not being any vertical drinking, limiting to the bar area, things like that. Would the objection to the premises still stand in light of that, or do you think they would address a lot of the concerns raised?
Examples rather than a list of requests, and I'd probably like to discuss that briefly with, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of Way Through either. I can only, it was only ideas that might want to be considered, but again, I'd probably like to discuss that with Greg before. It was an example, not a request. Yeah,
no, it was just that there's representation sort of around the existence of the premises generally, even irrespective of whether there's anything identifiable outside as it being an alcohol offering, but then to reduce what happens inside that can't be seen. Do you know what I mean? Do you know where I'm going? Sort of what happens inside that can't be seen outside anyway?
I think what I was challenging was that ancillary use was being used as a reason about alcohol prominence, and it was more an example of that. In my personal view, it feels like alcohol is not ancillary, because if it was ancillary, those sort of things would already apply.
Okay, thank you.
Greg.
Just to add, I mean, some more eloquently set this out than me, that the conditions that may or may not be imposed don't fundamentally address the concerns that were set out by Sam, the site and the vulnerability of users on the site, and the mixing of potential, the two client bases, for want of a better word, and the impulse controls as Sam has very clearly set out.
Thank you. And just finally, in terms of the impact on people visiting the premises, sort of children, young people, families, if this wasn't an alcohol licence we were here to consider, would those concerns still exist?
To an extent, Sam set out overdose of clients is not an uncommon thing, and there's a well-trod, well-executed staff wellbeing offer for staff, which is really quite traumatic, having witnessed it once, to a child or a parent who has no wellbeing support offer in place. It's impossible to say how that may impact somebody, but it certainly may impact somebody.
Thank you. That's all from me, Chair. Thank you.
Do the applicants have any questions?
Yes, Chair, quite a few in fact. First of all, it's going to be about semantics, because obviously that's quite meaningful. First of all, I'd ask the colleagues from public health, when you say the building, is it immediately adjacent, which was your first statement, or is it immediately opposite? Which is it to be?
I mean, it's next door. Maybe that's not a semantic question, but it's next door. There's fairly close proximity.
Yeah.
I don't know what the definition of adjacent would be in legal terms, but in my worldview, adjacent means sort of in the very immediate.
So you'd agree it's not the building right next door, which is a factory or warehouse, or I believe there's a social club being installed next to Portland House? Is there a children's club?
That's a community.
Community centre next door.
I don't know. No, next door is a locksmith, yeah.
Okay, so, yes.
Lot place. That's Pops.
So in the factory, which is in the building immediately adjacent to the Portland House, there is a...
It's called Pops Community Hub.
Pops
Community Hub.
Pops Community Centre.
So,
Were you aware of that?
Sorry, where is that?
Where the factory is. Councillor, if it assists, I draw your attention to the map on page 5 of the skeleton argument. You'll see Portland House is delineated in blue, and to the northwest of that is a factory, which is a community centre.
I mean, I'm not aware of it. We've never had any issue with that, but presumably it's behind Portland House. So it's not really got visibility.
Okay, and I have a further question for Wayfarer. You say that you treat in the region of 4,500, there's 4,500 treatments, which is highly commendable, for sure. Is that individual patients? There's 4,000 different patients, or is that the number of treatments over the course of a year?
That is patients, and that information is national data that's collected.
So I'm unclear, and I'm seeking clarification. Is that 4,300 plus or thereabouts unique patients, or is that the number of treatments dispensed over the course of a year to the patients?
So my understanding is that is unique patients, so that data is collected through national monitoring systems, and an episode would be discounted if it was a repeat episode of the same individual. So it counts unique individuals.
So I'm trying to establish how many visitors do you get a day to Portland House?
Well, we have 10 one-to-one interview rooms. We have 8 clinic rooms, and all are running at full capacity all day, to the point where we have actually had to seek additional premises to obviously cope with the demand within the service.
I referred to public health in their representation. They mention commissioning services, and that they're very careful in the site that they selected, Portland House, for their centre, to make sure that there was no other licensed premises in the area, and that was a consideration. Yet my understanding is the Shalesmoor off-licence and the Indian restaurant has been in situ for in excess of 10 years. Can you make comment on that?
It was a very short list for suitable sites, and compromises were made.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
In that case, it's over to you then to put your case to us and respond to some of the concerns that have been expressed.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application on behalf of Retrodome Chef Limited under Section 17 of the Act for the grant of a new premises licence. The application is for the authorisation for the sale, on sales only, of the supply and sale of alcohol from the hours of 11 in the morning to 22:30, and councillors will be aware that that is significantly an earlier time than most public houses in the area. The concept is similar to their establishment in Barnsley. It's similar, it's not the same. The establishment in Barnsley is well run. There's been no concerns for the police, but it is a separate bar and an amusement arcade. This simply is not the case for this particular application. The layout of the building is different and it doesn't lend itself to a bar. And we maintain that alcohol sales is simply ancillary to the main activity of amusement arcades, the retro games, the pinballs that you mentioned, and similar games. There is a cafeteria area for which they do wish to dispense not only alcohol, but hot beverages, soft drinks, sandwiches. They've got some rather fancy hot dog menus as well. So food will be provided. It is what you call an experiential type environment. The main driver is to access the amusement machines. The entrance is not opposite Portland House, it's around the other side. So people go in on the ground floor, go up the stairs to the main area upstairs. So you can't even see Portland House. There is a pay and display car park opposite, and we anticipate those families that are driving there will use that pay and display car park to use their facilities. There are three key elements. First of all, it is a destination venue. People are going there for a reason, and that is to play machines. It is an on-licence. Guests are not allowed to take their drinks outside. There are no off-sales. It's simply on-sales only. And that is obviously not the same as the off-licence across the road. And it is key that everybody coming in gets charged an admission fee. And that's in the region of between £12 and £14. And that admission fee enables them to have, the guests to have unlimited play on the machines. So all the machines are set to free play. If you want to play for an hour, that's great, but it's still 12 quid. If you want to play for 3 hours and indulge yourself, then you can stay. The beverage side of the business is an important factor, but probably represents less than about 15% of the sales. Half the fun is if you want a beer or a soft drink, you can walk in and there's drinks holders next to the machines where you can play pinball and sip a beer as you will. So we certainly would not expect to see no vertical drinking per se, but it is an amusement arcade. So it's on sales only, a heavy admission fee, and it's premium pricing of the drinks as well. That's not a consideration for the committee, I accept, but it's not cheap off sales. So the point of entry, £12, maybe £6 for a beer, or £5, somewhere in that region. People are paying £17 just to go in, and not just to go in, but to amuse themselves on the machines and have a drink as well. So it's not expensive, but it's certainly a barrier to entry to anybody who wants a cheap beer. I really can't foresee anybody trying to spend £12 before they even can buy a drink when they can go to the offie directly opposite. We've heard that the commissioning services, they say that if there was licensed premises in the area, they wouldn't have been able to commission the project. Well, we can see there's already directly opposite 2 licensed premises. And if you look around in the area, there are a number of public houses and off licenses, convenience stores, and so on, in and around that area. They do say, and I think rightly so, that from the viewing windows from the building of my client's premises, it does overlook the car park to Portland House. But we've offered, through mediation, to cover up those windows. The windows will be covered up. And my client is happy to put decals advertising the machines, the pinballs and that kind of feeling, and hot dogs, completely dissimilar to the Shalesmere off-licence across the road, which is promoting vodka and cans of beer and so on. This is a family entertainment centre. So it will be focused on amusements, hot dogs, the food offering, which is a very important part of the package that people use the premises. There will be party packages, so if you're celebrating an 18th birthday, 25th birthday, 40th birthday, or even a package for youngsters, then you can have that package to use the machines. But it is an amusement arcade. And in fact, the planning department has said, you know, it falls in amusement arcades, and that planning is now sought for the change of use. And they're more than happy to accept that. So the decals across the side of the building, one creates atmosphere, but it will stop anybody being able to overlook the car park on Portland House. The premises previously traded as a gymnasium. I think it specialised in boxing. As local councillors, you'll probably be familiar. They have relocated. Obviously, the landlord is keen to re-let the premises. And as operations go, the way forward in hospitality, which is facing a challenging environment, is experiential type environments. Now, this particular establishment is focused on the retro games, but there's others with flight darts and similar shuffleballs and the like, so that's the kind of ilk. But this is very much an amusement arcade. Your licensing officer has quite rightly pointed out that there's no gaming machines, there's no fruit machines that require either a notification or permit. They are really just amusement only. So the objectors said, well, it's in a close proximity to, the words were adjacent. Well, it's not adjacent, it is across a car park and across the road on the other side. At what level do you start stopping business enterprise because you have a treatment centre? And I'm not undermining the work they do. I think it's fantastic. And I have to sort of commend, I'm a southerner, but up in North, and I work in Leeds and Liverpool, the public health objective, the public health authorities are really pushing treatments for alcohol and for drugs. And I'm aware, and the applicant is aware, that you have a separate drugs policy and a separate alcohol policy, all to make Sheffield a much better place. And of course, my understanding is that Way Through attracts patients from further afield. But nonetheless, whilst I accept that maybe ambulances called from time to time, which for special treatments, well, you'd get that on the Eccles Hall Road with a number of premises on a Friday and Saturday. It's not just unique to this particular location. And the fact is, my client has thought about this, and he has determined the main entrance used to be for the gym directly opposite. But no, he's turned it round the other way, and you can see from the plans within the operation that it's completely the other side. So people arriving by car will probably just drive into the car park and won't even be aware that Portland House is opposite. And then we've heard the current hours. Portland House generally trades from 9 till 5, Monday through to Friday inclusive, with a couple of extra hours on the Thursday. They go through till 7. But they don't open bank holidays. They don't open on a Saturday or Sunday, currently. And the evenings and the weekends are my client's main thrust of the business. So the main operation will be when Portland House is closed. So how can it have an adverse impact? We have asked for hours from 11 to 22:30 because that gives us flexibility in terms of the offering. So we do intend to open longer in half-term holidays, not so much the school holidays, but half-terms where there's extra income to be had. And also there's corporate private events where people will hire out the venue and have a buffet and a package for some fun. So that's the scale of it. I'm just going to turn to Philip. He's just going to talk to you a little bit more, give you some more detail about how the operation works.
We try to target sort of families and sort of adults. We're not an alcohol-led at all. Our total food and sales and soft drinks accounts for less than 25%. It varies between about 18 and 25, depending on time of year and whether we've been open extended hours. We operate a strict sort of, you need a wristband to get in. All children that come and buy a child's wristband also come with an adult. They have to have an adult with them. We don't allow people to drop kids off and then go on their way. There's got to be there someone supervising. We tend to operate sort of like a 3 or 4 to 1. So if you're bringing 4 kids, you've got to have at least 1 adult. More than that, you've got to have 2 adults. Again, we try to be responsible in what we do. We don't allow people to get drunk. The Barnsley site does have a separate bar area, and that's mainly because of the mechanics of the building. It used to be an old car parts warehouse, a trade counter in effect. So it has a trade counter at the front and then an area to go through to the back where the big warehouse used to be. So that's where we've set up all our games, and the front area is effectively the bar. Yeah, we do allow people to come in, we do allow them to have a drink, but we seldom get them. Occasionally we have people locals will walk down, because we're a route into the town in Barnsley, they will call in, they'll have a drink, and then they'll carry on down. But we do not get people that come specifically to drink.
Can I just ask you to confirm to the committee, in this particular site in Sheffield, everybody has to pay an entry fee, so it's not, people can't just come in for a drink?
Yeah, that's correct. It's because of the layout of the building. The Barnsley site just doesn't, the shape of the entrance just doesn't lend itself to putting up barriers or making it an entrance. But in Sheffield it does. So we have an entrance on Snow Street, and that will be a controlled entrance. There'll be a short queuing area inside the building where people can approach the desk and they can buy a wristband and then enter the building, and then from that point.
So can you just confirm to the committee that everybody coming into the building has to pay an admission fee?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Chair, then I'd just like to bring your attention to section 182 of the guidance. You'll be familiar with subsections 9.3 to 9.11, where representations have been made. The police are the lead partner in terms of crime and disorder, but your colleagues from Public Health are absolutely right. Any responsible authority has the right, or even other persons have the right, to make comment on any of the 4 licensing objectives. But it is important to note that the police have not made a representation in this matter. There was some correspondence with environmental protection. Those conditions have been agreed, which are mainly biased towards health and safety, I have to say. And then, and it's important, we've mentioned Barnsley only as an example, but every application is based on its own merits. Yes, so you're considering the application today, not what goes on in Barnsley, but the merits of the application today. And there have been some recent changes to the section 182 guidance over the last 5 months. One is section 1.18. When making licensing decisions, all licensing authorities should consider the need to promote growth and deliver economic benefits. So hitherto, before that amendment to the section 182, and you must give due regard to section 182, the economic benefits of opening a business has to be a consideration. And then section 119, due regard to relevant plans, I think your own statement of licensing policy it states that investment in existing and new venues providing a wide range of cultural and social experiences, from dining experiences, theatre, live music, to family-friendly experiences. That's what you're going to encourage. That's in your statement of local licensing policy. Extended consumer choice, giving local communities and visitors greater freedom over where, when and how they enjoy leisure time. That's what you're promoting. You're promoting Sheffield as a happening place. I've worked in Sheffield before. It's a fantastic place. Then I would also draw your attention, and I'm sure your legal advisor will point out, the National Policy Framework has been published recently. That is simply guidance at best, not section 182. It's not a statutory instrument, but you will be required in a few years' time when you come to review your statement of licensing policy to include some of the elements of national, within the National Policy Framework, and I think it's in the bundle. You'll have reference to that. And this is really turning the tide, in part, because over time, the legislation in respect of licensing has got tougher and tougher. And for those who have been around a long time, when the Licensing Act 2003 went live in 2005, central government said light touch. That's what they were encouraging. And the average licence might have 6 or 7 conditions, and rightly so, about CCTV and so on. The average application now has 35. It's probably gone too far. Under the old Justice's licence, which no longer prevails, if you had a pub, you had to shut it at 11, 10:30 on a Sunday. And to be honest, there wasn't any other conditions other than doing that. But now we have a very tight, tough regime. I would suggest to you that the conditions offered by the licensing agent within the original submission it covers off all the expectations that you would think would be as conditions on the licence to effectively manage the business. They're fairly comprehensive and they are legally enforceable. And this is what would be expected from responsible operators. And of course, a breach of any licence conditions nowadays attracts an unlimited fine. It used to be 20,000, now it's unlimited, and or 6 months imprisonment. So a breach of any condition is a pretty hefty penalties that can be enforced. Not only that, the licence could be taken to review and revoked. So my applicant has got lots of experience in running similar venues. They've not had issues in the past. And as we said, there's been no representations from the police. So it falls down to, yes, it is in close proximity to Portland House and the services they provide. We get that, and they provide a very valuable service. But at what level, at what distance do you stop encouraging business to prosper? The landlord wants to let out the place. He has a willing lessee willing to invest in the business and convert it, employ staff. Surely that should be an objective for councillors. And we have considered the particular circumstances about Portland House being next door. He's offered to completely decal the window with non-alcoholic promotions, and the entrance will be managed around the other side of the building. Councillors, I can't think of much more that they can offer. We don't think it's going to undermine the work, the really good work that Waythrough does. And also, if you look at the opening hours, the general opening hours, there's a very little crossover. I think we did the sums. If you take out bank holidays and so on, it was about 14% crossover. Is that right? Yeah, about 14%.
That included the extended holiday opening hours as well.
Yes. Chair, that is my submission.
Thank you. I'll open this up to questions then now. John, I wonder if there's anything you'd like to start us off with?
Yes, thank you for that report. The question I ask is, what protections are in place in relation to stopping drug taking and drug abuse? And also, obviously people do tend to still smoke. Whereabouts will they be smoking outside this building? Have you a designated area?
Councillor, you've asked me two questions. I'll answer the first one first. As part of the application process and part of the staff induction, my company provides a training brief for the staff. Not only does it cover the 4 licensing objectives, but it covers all sorts of initiatives about drugs awareness, spotting drugs paraphernalia in the toilets, doing regular toilet checks and so on, and a seizure policy, both for drugs and or weapons, which will be bag tagged and collected by the local police. So there is a drugs awareness content, but it goes further than that. It also talks about vulnerable people. The more recent Ask for Angela campaign, where, and you would have read it, well, it was in the Telegraph only last week, about where vulnerable customers can ask for Angela at the bar and they're immediately looked after. So there's a whole raft of training within the licensing context, as well as health and safety, health and hygiene, and so on. There's a whole suite of training briefs to be given. Oh, and then in terms of smoking, that will be outside. So if you come down the stairs and go out the main entrance, it will be to the right. It'll be opposite the car park, but again, because it's further up the building, you still won't be able to see Portland House.
Stuart, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, it's a single point of entry into the building, yes?
Yeah, single point of entry. There is a fire exit on the other side of the building, but it's a single point of entry and exit.
Okay, right. So access is by payment only, and wristbands are given a separate coloured wristband to adult and young people.
That's correct.
Right. As you know, it's quite easy for a young person to appear over the age of 18. What steps are in place to ensure that adult wristbands are not going to be issued to people underage?
Chair, like so many of licensed premises nowadays, they operate the national policy of Challenge 25. If you're lucky enough to look under the age of 25, then you will be required to have ID. No ID, you won't get service. But in respect of the wristbands, the Challenge 25 will be in a similar place. To get an adult wristband, you have to prove ID if you're over 18. In terms of the machines, because they're not age restricted, if somebody hasn't got ID, they could still have a child's ban, but it wouldn't enable them to access the drinks and so on. But even then, there are 2 points of control. Firstly, on the admission, because it's manned by a cashier, and secondly, there is a unique responsibility for the bartender as well to check ID. If they're uncomfortable that that person looks under 25, they must have ID. And the staff will also be trained in terms of proxy purchasing. As you are aware, under the Licensing Act, it's an offence to attempt to or to buy alcohol for somebody else who's under the age of 18. So there's quite rigid controls, and obviously your council, through trading standards, will time to time do test purchasing, and that's why there's such a robust system in place.
Okay, further on to that, you say the machines have individual drinks holders on the machines, so obviously people will be able to purchase alcohol or soft drinks at the bar and migrate to the machines to consume them while they're playing.
Yes.
What's to stop an adult buying an alcoholic drink and sharing a machine with a young person and let that young person drink?
Well, it's exactly the same as a pub. There will be a member of staff floor walking, that's what they call it, to maintain the machines, and they will be monitoring who is or who is not drinking. So actually it's better than a pub because you have a wristband, it's even more easily recognisable. But nonetheless, even common sense will still prevail because... are they clips or rubber bands?
No, you can't take them off.
Oh, yes, good. So the bracelets, you can't, very similar to festivals that you would have been to, you can't take them off. Once they're on, they're on.
Right, thanks very much.
We basically have them printed specially for us, and you put them on tight enough so that they can't come off, and we change the band colours basically on a daily basis, so we can tell.
Thank you. Why here? What appealed about this site?
Well, yes. When you're searching for a site, often you will retain estate agents, and you'll register with all the estate agents to send their bump through on a regular basis. I myself get 5 emails a day with property available, and from time to time, something strikes you as suitable in terms of the layout and affordable, and in a city. I mean, Sheffield's a great place to be. Why wouldn't you want to come to Sheffield?
Does the business run a booking system, or is it turn up, or is it a combination? I'm just thinking about sort of capacity and whether you might sort of, if it was full, have people loitering in the area waiting to come in.
At the moment, we don't. At Barnsley, it's just a turn-up service, but we never get to capacity. We have got in development a booking system that we're going to put in place so we can manage that better, because we do anticipate that Sheffield may be a bit busier.
With the volume of customers you're expecting, do you think you can manage them in the reception area you identified rather than having people queuing outside?
Yeah, we'll be operating a similar system to a nightclub, which we know exactly their worker clicker system, well, the till systems gives you all the information that you need. So they're able to identify how many people are in the venue at any one time.
I'm going to just check, I know we're looking at this as the Sheffield operation, but are people allowed to take drinks from the bar in the Barnsley operation and drink round the machines?
Yes, they can, yeah.
Thank you. I think that's it from me. Sam, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Just what is the capacity of the venue, please?
Which one? Barnsley?
No, Sheffield.
We're going to put it at around 140. Yeah.
Yes, the capacity around 140. It is subject, I mean, they've not gone on site yet, so it is subject to a fire risk assessment by an external assessor. That might go slightly up or slightly down, but we're talking around 140, which is a small pub's worth, really.
We based that basically on how many machines. We anticipate getting 100 to 110 machines in. So after you get beyond a certain point, the user experience just becomes bad if you've got too many people in, because people can't get on a machine. And so we would cap it. We would sort of like one person per machine plus a few in the bar eating food. That's
So from an operator's perspective, that's what we call a comfort level. But the actual defined fire capacity will be based on the fire risk assessment. And of course, that's based on the number of exits, and they've got the entrance and the fire exit, which is no longer in use, is quite wide. So, but again, most venues don't operate to their maximum capacity as fire risk assessed. They limit it to much smaller because that's the comfort level. And surprisingly, you take more money if you've got less people in, because there's comfort level, people can buy stuff.
Sorry, I forgot it was on me. What's the process for managing people not taking drinks downstairs and outside?
Well, the cashier will be there. There'll be 3 points of control. One is the person working on the floor. Secondly, the bartender or the kitchen assistant working by the cafe will also be able to see whether people's going in. There will be notices near the entrance on the first floor to say, do not remove your drinks. And then the absolute fail-safe is the cashier on the front desk who'll be able to see what's going on. Not dissimilar to nightclubs.
I wonder if Public Health had any questions for the applicants.
Statements as opposed to a question?
You will be allowed to sum up.
Okay.
So you get a chance to come back and say whatever you wish. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I did have one. You mentioned the service at Portland House attracts patients from further afield, outside Sheffield. Can you explain what you meant by that, please?
Well, it's a centre, through my reading, I thought that you attracted patients from outside of Sheffield, a wider geographic area. Is that not the case?
No, that's incorrect. We are commissioned to provide a service to people with a Sheffield postcode. We don't take people from outside of the area.
So if there are no further questions for the applicant, then can I ask the response? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Regarding the cashier, sat downstairs at the bottom of the stairs by themselves, obviously you're talking in terms of probably more than 100 people coming into the premises, paying a reasonable amount of money. That's a lot of money for one cashier to be looking after if he's supposed to monitor people trying to take drinks out as well. What safeguards have you got to protect the cashier?
Well, Councillor, it's two things, and I experienced that taxis in Sheffield only take cash. In this venue, the primary source of income will be via card. So that negates it. I mean, the fact is that card machines are safer, more secure, and actually cheaper than lumping cash back to the bank. So I don't think that will be, it's not a safety issue.
Okay, thank you.
We do about 85% card at this Barnsley venue. I have no reason to think it'll be any different here.
So if we move on to summing up, is there anything else that Public Health would like to say in summing up or to add to their representation?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of points and then I'll hand to Greg to finalise the sum up. I'd still like to draw attention to the fact that the application says that alcohol is ancillary. I would still maintain that, given the evidence that we've got about the development of a bar, alcohol available alongside, the fact that there's even drinks holders provided on the games, that alcohol and the fact that alcohol is served from the opening, for the time the doors open to the time the doors close in the evening, that this is predominantly alcohol-led or at least equivalent. There were parallels drawn to clubs, and yes, clubs have an admission fee. Admission fee was a reason to negate the alcohol side of things, but as most of us would recognise, you go to a club, you pay an admission fee, you're not there purely to dance, you're there to do other things at the club as well as dance. I would also, the gentleman drew attention to our statement of licensing policy and referenced some bits around economic impacts. I'd also like to draw the committee members' attention to some further wording in our council statement of licensing policy, that there is an expectation that applicants and licence holders familiarise themselves with the alcohol-related issues that may be detrimentally affected by the provision of licensable activities, and that our statement of licensing policy does recognise the impact of alcohol on the public health of Sheffield. And I think my final point was that Portland House way through and likewise has had significant investment and process invested in by the council. They are there. It would be extremely difficult to move. It was that this venue was chosen for a reason, albeit, as Greg mentioned, with some compromise because we were limited. The Retrodome isn't currently there. we're not saying that this sort of venue shouldn't exist. I fully support this venue, this type of venue. I'd love to visit myself. However, it needs to exist in the right place. It's not that it shouldn't exist, it needs to exist in the right place in Sheffield. And also, just to draw a fact, the licensing is preventable. The licensing system is about being preventable of foreseeable issues.
3 points, if I may, to close from public health side. It would seem a fairly straightforward decision were it not very proximal to the location of Portland House. Many thousands of fairly vulnerable substance and alcohol misusers in any given year. That point was fairly well made. For the avoidance of doubt, I'm very pro-growth, very pro-business, very pro-economic benefit. Harm from drugs and alcohol is also on the ledger. If we're talking about UK PLC, it's obviously impossible to link to this specific venue, but harm from alcohol is a very legitimate issue for economic growth as well, etc. There's significant overlap between opening hours and Portland House opening hours, and as Sam has eloquently said, that we may well be extending Portland House opening hours to cope with increasing demand. And last point from me, as Amanda has said, it's a choice to make a decision here. It's your choice. Fully accept your choice. It adds to existing risk in a fairly sensitive location with lots of vulnerable service users.
Is there anything way through would like to see in summing up?
Yes, please. Firstly, I would like to say the basis of the case put forward by the applicants is around current opening times. And as I've said, it is on our business development plan to extend opening times at Portland House. And I wonder if the heavy reliance on our current opening times is in some way an admittance that it is going to be an issue or two businesses open at the same time. Secondly, I would question if we're advertising or promoting as a family venue, how responsible is it for children to be seeing their parents drinking in the early hours of the day at 11 o'clock in the morning. And that's all from me.
Thank you, it's really helpful. And finally over to the applicants to sum up your case today.
Thank you very much. Not much to add other than that I would summarise the following key points. Firstly, it's an on-licence. Patrons cannot remove drinks from the bar, from the premises. Secondly, the entrance is over the other side of Portland House. Patrons will not be able to see Portland House. And thirdly, the hours that they mainly operate will be outside of the current hours for way through. I appreciate that in the future, at some stage, they may extend those hours, but they're not operating right now. And there's very little crossover on bank holidays, Saturdays and Sundays and the evening. Thirdly, under section 182 of the 118, you do have to consider the commercial prosperity of a business. The hours asked for are fairly modest, through till 22:30, lower than most pubs in the area. And the operator has got experience and a good track record in running similar style operations. And it is similar, it is not the same. There is, the point of entry is around £12. So to get a pint of beer is £18. I doubt very much if the patrons for Portland House, the patients there, would become patrons across the road. My client is happy not to put any alcohol advertising on that front fascia windows overlooking Portland House. And there is a whole raft of conditions in the application and agreed with environmental protection that should satisfy you that it will be a well-run and managed place. I hear what the objectors say, and I can understand their concerns, but if you were minded to grant the licence and it went wrong, there is always the opportunity for the objectors to take the licence to review. We would urge you to grant the licence as applied for, and because we feel that the merits of the application, based on its own merits, it will not undermine the 4 licensing objectives. Chair, that is my submission.
Thank you. Could we have the options then, please, Jane?
You can. So the options available to the committee this morning are to grant the premises licence in terms requested, to grant the premises licence with conditions, or to reject the whole or part of the application.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Could I ask you to now leave while we take legal advice and come to a decision? And if you want to stay around, we'll invite you back in and give you that decision as soon as we've made it.
Thank you, Chair.
So much for your time and your representations this morning. The decision of the licensing committee is to grant as applied for, but subject to all the additional conditions which you've offered and for which we're grateful you've offered. We've done that because it accords with the Licensing Act, and whilst we are very sympathetic to the work that is done way through, I think the conditions that you've offered and the way you operate that business doesn't make it obvious that it is selling alcohol. It doesn't appear to be promoting alcohol. It is, you know, a gaming place, and that if it didn't have an alcohol licence, some of the safeguarding issues and other issues that have been raised would apply anyway. You know, selling alcohol doesn't actually impact on that, and we think what you've done does limit this as best as you can in the circumstances. Obviously, if things don't work, you may be back. We hope that's not the case. We really hope it's a roaring success and that you do very, very well. And
Councillors, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Just for the benefit of the recording and with the parties having gone, that everyone has the right of appeal against the decision. You because we've imposed conditions, and then because they made representations against the granting of the licence. So following the hearing, the licensing service will issue a notice just setting out a summary of the evidence before the committee and how they came to that decision, and just finalising those conditions so it makes it a little bit clearer for everyone what's going to go on the licence.
May I just ask what the timing of the decision notice will come through?
Within 5 working days.
Yes.
No, it will be. It won't be today. That's as much as I can give you. Thank you.
That dramatic start. Welcome to the licensing subcommittee. I'm David Barker. I'm going to be chairing the subcommittee this morning. But before we go into the meeting, I need to pass on to Democratic Services, who will just go through the housekeeping arrangements for us. I know, this is what you see. People grumble when I don't do it. When I do it, people grumble. I can't win.
Right. Thank you, Chair. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please take instruction from staff and stewards. The assembly point is at Tudor Square. Please can I request everyone to switch mobile devices to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. The meeting today will be webcast, and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. While the meeting is open to the public, photography, video and sound recording of the proceedings is permitted. However, the Chair has discretion to withdraw or suspend this permission. For example, if the recording is disrupting the conduct of the meeting or is being undertaken in a manner which could capture personal information, or in the event that a member of the public participating in a meeting objects to being recorded. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. We don't have any apologies for this meeting. Do any members have any declarations of interest on this item? And the meeting is in public. We are being filmed, and we have no reason at the moment to exclude any of the press or masses of public that have come to see the meeting today. So we will crack on. So I'm still David Barker. I'm still chairing the meeting. To my right, the members of the meeting. Can I ask you to introduce yourselves, please?
Hello, my name is John Booker, Councillor for Statutory and Upper
Hello, my name is Stuart Wallace, Councillor for Bayton.
And we have a number of council officers working with us today. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves, please?
Morning, Samantha Bond, Legal Advisor to the Subcommittee.
Hello, I'm Jane Goff from Licensing, and I'll be reading the report this morning.
Joanne Cooper, Democratic Services.
And could you just confirm your names for the record, please?
Hi, myself Kalpesh Pao, owner of the Budgens.
Good morning, my name is Chris Mitchener. I'm the agent who submitted the application.
Good morning. So we have a set process for these hearings, which will be outlined somewhere in your agenda papers, usually the last page of the papers. And you will see at point 4 of that process that it says the solicitor of the committee will outline the procedure to be followed. So Sam, could I ask you to outline our process this morning?
Thank you, Chair. Nearly caught me out with that one as well. Have you both got a copy of the papers that you can see? Yeah, lovely stuff. So yeah, I'm sure your page numbers are completely different from ours, as always happens. Oh, fantastic. But yeah, it's just right at the back, the procedure. It looks a lot worse than it is, so I'll just quickly run through that. So the licensing officer, who's Jane this morning, will introduce the report. If there are any questions concerning the report, can be raised then. So if there's anything that needs amending or updating for the record. We have got outstanding representations from Sheffield Council's Public Health Department, but as you can see, they're not present here today, and I understand they have sent apologies. So what we'll do is just head straight over to the applicant and their representative to detail the application for the variation and provide any clarification on it in response to public health representations as listed in the report, which members have seen and have read before the hearing. Members and officers will ask you questions, and then you'll just be invited to sum up if there's any final thoughts you want to leave members with before we take the options as detailed in the report from the licensing officer. Members will then go into private session to take legal advice and consider the application. You're very welcome to wait around and we can give you that decision a little bit later on this afternoon. The decision of the licensing committee will be given in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act 2003 and regulations made thereunder. And at any time during the hearing, members can request legal advice, which we can do in open session, as we are now, or private, where we'll just ask you guys to pop next door. We'll have a discussion and then invite you back in and feedback what that was. Hopefully that's more straightforward than it sounds. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. Could we have the report then, please, Jane?
You certainly can. So we are here this morning, still this morning just, to consider a variation application for Budgens, Parsons Cross Post Office, 3 to 5 Wordsworth Drive. It's made by the current premises licence holder, PAU Enterprises Limited, and it was received by the licensing service on the 5th of June this year, which is Appendix A of the report. So the application proposes to extend the opening hours, extend the hours of sales of alcohol, and to add late night refreshment onto the licence. So the current sale of alcohol is for consumption off the premises only, 6 AM till 11 PM, 7 days a week. The proposed sale of alcohol are for consumption off the premises only still, but 24 hours, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Late night refreshment will be 11 PM till 5 AM, 7 days a week. Opening hours 24 hours a day. The current premises licensing plan is attached at Appendix B, if you would like to see that. And the reason why we're here today is that there has been an unresolved representation from Sheffield Public Health, which is outlined in Appendix C of the report. So I'll scoot down to Section 8, the appeals section, which states that the Licensing Act 2003, Section 181, Schedule 5, makes provision for appeals to be made by the applicant and those making representations against the decisions of the licensing authority to the Magistrates' Court. And the recommendations this morning are that members carefully consider the representations made and take such steps as the subcommittee consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives.
Thank you, Jane. Have members got any questions on the report at all? Do the applicants have any questions on the report? Then it's across to you to state your case to us and address the representations that have been made.
Thank you very much. Right, so as you've heard, my name is Chris Mitchener. I represent Cal here, Cal Powell, of Powell Enterprises Limited, who are the premises licence holders, and Cal is the DPS. This is an application, as you've heard, for a variation to an existing premises licence for our client's premises known as the Budgens at 3 to 5 Wordsworth Drive. I don't know if you know, but it's Wordsworth Avenue, is it, the long one?
Yeah, long one.
And then it's just as you're going down the hill, it's off on the right. And it's in what I would call a little local shopping parade. I don't know whether you've got so many of them around the area. It's lovely, really. You've got little areas where lots of little shops are, which is just perfect for the local residents. And it happens to be the local post office as well, and arguably within a mile, I think, because one's closed, so they're enjoying that business. And as you've heard, we're licensed from 6 a.m. to 11. We currently trade 7 while 10. But with the reason we've put in the application is we wish to carry out a refit early 27 with a view to moving things around inside and changing things up. And part of that then is to fit a, subject to planning, I don't think you've got that yet.
Not yet.
Fit a window in the shop's front in order to be able to sell product through the window after 11 and up until 5 or 6 in the morning. And that would include then alcohol. We carry out deliveries at the minute from 9:30 while 10, but when we've done the refit and everything else and the windows open and everything, then we would carry those on. And they're all dealt with by a company called Snappy Shopper, which you may or may not know. They have a system, an online system where you order through, cite the evidence that you're going to prove for ID or being of age, and then we have to check that when we deliver whatever product we're delivering. One of the things I was going to say to the lovely lady from the health was that we can, the only word I know is blacklist it, but we can restrict any deliveries to the particular site that she's raised in her representation, that they can't have alcohol. They are already customers, but we believe it's staff ordering sandwiches and snacks and things like that. But we're not happy, but we're quite happy to restrict it. I've just done one in Portsmouth where the police wanted me to restrict supplies to the main hospital and the second hospital. So that's the great big one and the little tiny one. And they didn't want alcohol delivered to those because apparently patients were being naughty with it. But then we discussed, well, staff are entitled to it if they live there. So we've kind of have to come up with a form of words that covers it. But we're quite happy to do whatever is required as far as that is concerned. But it's one of these things. At 10:15, shop stores and supermarkets would normally be free to provide the sale of alcohol on their opening hours. We're suggesting that the opening hours could be increased. And actually, it's worthy of note that the representation made does not say we shouldn't have the extended opening hours. It just says it doesn't want us to sell alcohol. And it doesn't say anything about late night refreshment. So if, on a presumption basis, it might even be that we've already got that. But I leave that to you to confirm rather than me to be presumptuous. It's also worthy of note, and perhaps more important, that there are no representations against the hours applied for, as I've said, from any one single local resident. Nobody has objected, and nor have any of the other responsible authorities, including the police, and that's perhaps more relevant as we carry on. There's no allegations from any parties that the store's a focus of disorder or disturbance, or indeed has been so. Colour's been there from, gosh, when was it you were there?
2017.
2017. We put through a variation, or actually no, a new application, because they extended into the store next door in December 22, so they opened then in early 23. And this whole application really is on the basis of customer demand for us to increase the orders and increase the offer to facilitate what locals want. Section 911 covers this, really, but the site is well run by hugely experienced operators who have years of small store operations behind them. And what we're asking for is to just extend the hours. We've provided the plan. It's virtually as is now. We've noticed one thing today, as it happens, that we would want to move the coffee. So if you were kind enough to grant the licence, we would then have to move the coffee at some stage in the future on the plan, because when it's in the wrong place, for want of a better way of putting it, but it's only coffee, so it'll either be dealt with as a minor or whatever one would hope. But that's the only thing. So other than that, we're talking about the plan that's submitted, and we're here today to address the concerns of the Responsible Authority for Public Health, a copy of which is in your bundle, as you've said. It's Appendix C. I don't know what the number is, because I don't think it's paginated, but... And if I may, it's more difficult it's kind of thrown me, if I'm honest with you, because normally I sit and listen to what the representation is, and we're told what the representation is, and then I can rebut it, because I've got all my notes, and my notes say rebut this and rebut that. And I've now got to make their case, in effect, and then rebut it, because otherwise what I'm saying doesn't make any sense. So if I go through it, and there's anything that I haven't dealt with, if you would be prepared just to say.
Well, it's open to questions anyway, so...
Wonderful. Okay. The public health, not only are they requesting effectively that you don't grant the licence, but they're saying in their best world, they would rather it was 8 a.m. rather than the existing 6 a.m. So not just content with not granting the 24 hours that we're seeking. They would prefer it was reduced, although in fairness, that is what they tend to ask for. But as I say, it's important to reiterate there are no representations from anybody, including the police, because 9.15 is very important on this. Normally when we have a stat hall, I read 9.15 out so everybody knows what I'm talking about. But I'm happy to think that you guys know what it is I'm talking about on 9.15. At Appendix C, you've heard, you haven't heard, look at that. We're told that crime and disorder will be prejudiced, and that extending alcohol sales increases the opportunities for alcohol-related crimes, disorder, and antisocial behaviour. But we already know that the police, who we have spoken to, and who have actual responsibility for these matters and the experience of dealing with them, are content for the application to proceed as applied for, with no representations made. The comment they made was they were much happier to have the window for service after 11 o'clock than people coming into the store and everything else. The only caveat to that, and it hasn't been worded yet, but that's why I'm bringing it up, is that I tend to do forecourts as much as I do ordinary stores. And I've always asked that if a young lady is on her own and comes onto the forecourt in a car on her own, and then lads come onto the forecourt, and there's 2 or 3 of them, that young lady be allowed entry into the store to pay for her goods, whilst the lads would not be allowed into the store. And it's almost asked for Angela as much as anything else, but was actually asking them to ask for Angela. So that would be the only caveat that I would ask. Other than that, the store would effectively close the doors at 11 o'clock, serve through the hatch until 5 or 6 o'clock, and then reopen the doors again. We are then told that public nuisance will be impacted because of the residential nature of the location, but as I've said, not one local resident has made any representations, nor have any of your officers in environmental health, the body you would look to support any such representation on the basis of the points raised. Under public safety, we are then told that Way Through have a placement at the Greens in Murdoch Road, which is within 800 metres of our client's premises, as we've been told. And then they've qualified it with the little thingy at the bottom about how 800 metres is an accepted thingy. Now, they're right. It's actually 575 metres on a radius. It is that close. But it's not that close with no direct road access. And we reckon it's between 800 and 830. And I'm not splitting hairs. It is about that. But I honestly cannot see how having a property that is for people who are in remission from drink problems or drug problems or anything like that, that is that far away, would impact on something like this, particularly when, if you know the area, it's kind of at the top of the hill. So if you kind of go north, you hit the Esso, which is a late night 24-hour licensed store, the same distance away from us, where you go down the hill and along, and then you've got to go back up the hill again afterwards. It's semantics, I know, but I simply don't get how public health are saying that the licence should not be granted on that basis. These care in the community operations survive and thrive because the community accepts them. I used to live next door to one in my previous house. My wife's godson, until recently, was in one of these homes, and they're fantastic. And this is one of the biggest charities in the country that operate this one. I don't know if you know. And we support it. But the whole idea is that it's in the community. If the community is then being restricted, the guys and gals aren't getting what they need, which is community life. And on the website, it says, feeling part of the community can be a large part of sustaining your recovery. This is their website, sorry. And we support you to do that and learn how to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And I find it quite difficult that they've raised this as a rep when it's so far away, when we're already dealing with them for non-alcohol, and will continue to do so for non-alcohol. And if they would like to say who they don't want us to serve, we won't serve them. But it shouldn't necessarily impact on everybody else in the area when not one local resident has made a representation. The operators have made no representation themselves, and we are not told this. Oh, I'm so sorry. The rep then reverts to rendering alcohol-related crime, antisocial behaviour, street drinking, and the availability of alcohol as being relevant to the existing levels of crime, a view not supported by the police licensing team, whom I've spoken to, and they are perfectly happy with this application, and we have actually discussed another application along the same lines, which we've now agreed we are going to put in for a site that was refused last year when there were issues with regard to the applicant and the DPS. The point was made that we provide, or we may provide cheap alcohol, and we don't. And this application would not lead to the provision of cheap alcohol or any change to the existing operation. So the claims made are based on supposition of what may happen in the future, not supported by local residents or the responsible authorities individually responsible for all of the matters raised. And this is a full convenience store under the Budgens format that many local customers already walk to and enjoy the enhanced facilities offered. That is why we're trying to increase them, because it's based on, if you wish, the local demand. At the same time, if there was a real proposition that there would be issues at the site, then the police would have made representation, as would environmental health and all the responsible authorities, including your own licensing team, all of whom are content to allow the application to go ahead as applied for. No evidence against this application is adduced, and there is none, and if there were, the police or your own council officers would take a strong interest in the application. So if I could just address the basic salient points that the site is already, sorry, I'm missing stuff out because I haven't had anybody to talk to, so it's more difficult. So if I could address the basic salient points that the site is already allowed to open, and we are here because we wish to sell alcohol for the extended hours of 24 hours every day, Monday to Sunday inclusive, through the pay window from 11 o'clock. We've also, as I've said, applied for late night refreshment 2300 to 05, which has had no representation against it whatsoever, and of course the extended opening hours, which again have no representation against them. There's no evidence adduced or referred to support the view that antisocial behaviour, etc. will occur with the sale of alcohol, and only the public health and the responsible authorities have made any representation, which if the worries and concerns were likely or real, the other responsible authorities will be expected to make a representation in this process. It's a community food store, and that's what we thrive on. That's how, if we upset the community, they won't use us. You will know there are lots and lots and lots of other food stores in the area, all within 800 metres. We've got an Asda just up the road that shuts at 10. They did have a 24-hour licence, but for whatever reason that they have, they've shut at 10. But then on the other side of the road is an Esso that's open 24. So there's lots going on. And the guidelines are clear that representations made, if they are to be supported, must show a causal link to the application sought and be supported by evidence where there is any. There is no causal link, nor importantly, any evidence adduced by any party, and there is no support from the other responsible authorities, and that's why 9.12 is so important. The Act and guidance are clear that the applicant has a responsibility only to sell alcohol to people of age who are not drunk and to those purchasing for people under age or under the influence of drugs or drink. But equally, the Act and guidance are clear that the applicant cannot be held responsibility for the actions of customers when they've left the premises. But nobody's adduced anything to suggest that there was an issue at the moment in any event. That said, we're fully aware of the social responsibilities and your policy as well as the guidelines, and will strive to ensure that any issues they may have influence over and be addressed. This will specifically include, for example, the provision of notices requesting that customers leave the premises quietly. Whilst these matters haven't been raised, every individual member of staff is trained on a personal basis. They are then required to take a test. They are then retested every 6 months. They're authorised at the time of the test. They're authorised every 6 months, and there is a record kept of that. I know that's recommendation, but it's different when it actually happens. We also do the full refusals log, and the Challenge 25 is also embraced. But nobody's alleging poor operation anyway. So the Licensing Act, in my view, is perhaps a flawed device in many ways, but it is what we have and what we have to deal with. And the case of Thwaites at paragraph 50-63 is also extremely relevant. And it seems to me that we deal with this matter based not on what we know, feel, or even want to do, but rather with exactly what is before us today. An application for the sale of alcohol in line with the guidelines, with no evidence against the application as there is none, for the hours sought, which have not been challenged. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, that's helpful. I'll now just open this up to questions and see if there are any points of clarity. Stuart, is there anything you'd like to start us off with?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much. Yes, you've quoted several extracts from the public health objections. One thing you didn't quote was, I will quote it now, according to South Yorkshire Police data, between May 25 and April 26, approximately 49 crimes were reported within 100 metres of the premises, and this included 21 violent and sexual offences. There's obviously an allegation or a danger that increasing the sale of alcohol outside the normal hours that you do already would obviously have a knock-on effect and possibly increase the likelihood of further violence and sexual attacks.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't, sorry. I've spoken to the police about this, and I asked, first of all, I spoke to the lovely lady at Public Health, and I said, well, what are the crimes that you're suggesting are there? Because we have no knowledge of them. And she couldn't go any further than the list she'd given us, which is somewhat generic at best. So I thought, okay. So I phoned the police and I asked the police, and they couldn't give me any further detail either. But what happens is that you get a catch-all, in the sense that if something is a press button of a crime, then they are decompartmentalised. I've just made up a new word. They're compartmentalised so that if anything to do with sex, then it goes in as a sex crime, but I cannot tell what level it is, how it occurred, whether it's a pure domestic, with or without alcohol, or anything else. We just do not have it. And I said to the lovely lady that I felt it was a little bit unfair, that she was quoting just broad brush figures without any detail. And I did an application in Doncaster for an Esso station a few years ago, where I was told that there'd been a murder there. So I looked at all the data, and there was a murder listed at the site. So I queried it with the manager, and they didn't come up with it. It turns out the data that's available to me, and apparently to the health department, is not the data that the police have. And what turned out was that somebody was knifed on a bus, died as the bus was still en route. The bus stopped outside the garage to get help, and it was then listed, because that's a focal point, if you wish, for reporting. So it never ever happened there, and yet the police were objecting for a short period of time about having a murder at the site. I've asked the lovely lady from Public Health. She's not aware of any greater detail. And I've asked the police, and they won't give me any greater detail because I have to apply through the bigger channels. But my only answer that I can give you is that the police are fully aware of all of these different crimes, and they've made no representation whatsoever. So they can't believe that it's going to cause any more problems, because otherwise they would have done.
John, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Thank you. Yes, thanks for that presentation. It's not easy when you're talking for someone else, I understand that. But you made a statement earlier that if a young lady turned up to your window slot and then 3 gentlemen turned up, you would allow the lady inside. I mean, it's a noble statement, but what security do you have? What's to stop the 3 trying to rush India? How many people would be there to back that statement up?
That's a lovely point. If they're right behind her, the chances are we won't be able to let her in, but we'll be aware of what the situation is. If she's there and we see people coming along and we're aware of them, at that stage we might let her in. It's the same as on forecourts. It depends how busy the forecourt, and if the young lady's just walking up to pay for the fuel, and then a car comes on, we might let her in, but we wouldn't let the people in the car. It's a judgment call that we have to train.
My point is there's no extra staff there. Or there won't be any extra staff. There's probably just 1 person. 2 people. Right, okay. 2 people. Okay.
After 11 o'clock, when you shut the building up, are you expecting this to be predominantly deliveries, or are you expecting quite a throughput of people coming to the window?
The expectation is predominantly deliveries, but it's down to what local people want, and sometimes people don't want to pay the delivery fee. You know, if they're just up the road, they'll walk down. Whereas if it's, you know, however distance away, then they'll want a delivery. I've never understood anybody paying money to have a delivery, but that's just me.
I was just looking at are the people living directly above the property?
Yeah. Family flat.
So you won't want to be kept awake all night, I presume? I've got no further questions. Sam, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Just Public Health have raised in relation to this site at the Greens, the way through site. Have you had any sort of interaction with them while you've been operating over the years? Any discussions, any issues raised from them, anything like that?
I actually told Cal where it was. He didn't actually know that's what it was. It's a customer, but he didn't know that it was a way-through site. I'm only aware of it because of the family history of the godson who was in. I mean, these places are fantastic, so we support them 100%. I just don't think it should impact on the business. But no, we haven't had any. I don't know who's there. Yeah. So it's at what level, if you know what I mean.
That's everything from me, thank you.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to tell us in summing up?
Just apologise for the rubbish presentation, but I assure you it was because I didn't have anybody to rebut.
We're not paying you, so I apologise. No, there's nothing wrong with your presentation at all. It was really helpful. So, could we have the options then, please, Jane?
Press my buttons too quickly. Well, everything went everywhere. So the options this afternoon now, we are in the afternoon, is to grant the premises licence in the terms requested, to grant the premises licence with conditions, or to reject the whole or part of the application.
Thank you. Could I ask you... Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, just one question I did raise, and it's very, very late to be raising it, but the condition with regard to not only serving through the hatch after 11 o'clock, we might have to be finessed. If you're kind enough to grant, we might have to finesse that somehow, and I would be quite happy to do that in association with the police if you think that's worthwhile.
I think it'd be helpful to be absolutely clear on that. I think, you know, in the application it says no access to customers between, except in an emergency or in light of public safety issues, which I think does actually set it in the right context. Right, so if I could ask you to now leave the room while we take legal advice and come to a decision, and as soon as we've made that decision, we'll invite you back in and tell you what it is. So you can leave anything you wish in the room. The decision of the licensing subcommittee is to grant as applied for, but subject to one additional condition, and that condition would be to have an external camera as part of the CCTV condition, just covering the serving hatch, which may be something that you were going to do anyway, but we think. So, but apart from that, I'm sure you've done your background, and we hope it works out as well as you're expecting to. Obviously, there are rights of appeal against our decision, so Sam, would you just like to outline the appeal rights?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the benefit of the recording and the parties that can't be here today, and for you, because everyone gets the right of appeal today. So following the hearing, you'll receive a notice setting out a summary of your evidence before the committee, how they came to the decision and the wording on that condition. Although I appreciate you said it's something you were going to do anyway, it just safeguards the position of the councillors today. So should a right of appeal wish to be exercised, that's within 21 days to the magistrates court. But wish you every success, and thank you both for coming and for hanging around with the late start as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration. It's greatly appreciated.